You are a delusional charity case. And this is scribbling nonsense. Eleanor Burke, my boyfriend's mother, said this. She was holding a stack of my old research notes. She said it with a smile. A cruel, satisfied smile that defined her entire existence. She expected me to burst into tears. She expected me to beg, to apologize for daring to have a thought in my head that did not revolve around her son, Liam. Instead, I just watched the ash from her cigarette fall onto my hardwood floor. I catalogued it. I noted the way her lip trembled. Just slightly. With the thrill of her own cruelty. She did not know that I was letting her do this. She did not know I was a runaway heiress. Dr. Anna Zettner. And this charity case life was a test. A test. I was realizing that her son was failing spectacularly, and this debt of gratitude I felt I owed them was about to be paid in full. This was the beginning of their end. They thought I was a pawn in their game. They had no idea I was the one who built the entire board. If you want to see exactly how I dismantled them, piece by piece, subscribe and follow along. You will not want to miss how this ends. Eleanor dropped the stack of notes. My notes. Directly into the kitchen trash can. Right on top of yesterday's coffee grounds. She did it with a flourish. This was an act of theater. I remembered the work that had gone into those notes. They were not my final thesis. But they were the foundation. They were the sleepless nights from my undergraduate honors program. The first sparks of the molecular sequencing algorithm that would eventually become Project Chimera. This was the work I did when I was still passionate, before I understood how cruel the world of academia and finance could be. That stack of paper represented a younger, more hopeful version of myself. Liam had seen those notes when we first started dating. He had found them in a box. He had praised them. He told me I was secretly brilliant and my inspiration. He said my mind was a fascinating place, and that he was lucky to have met me. His words were the reason I had stayed. His flattery was the balm I needed after running away from my ruthless family and my even more ruthless fiancé, Julian Thorne. But his deception was absolute. While I was spending my nights at MIT developing those foundational theories, he was struggling to pass his own postdoctorate qualifiers. He was living off money from an anonymous grant. I later learned that anonymous grant was me. It was money I had secretly funneled to him from my trust fund. Routed through the university's development office. He was literally living off the scribbling nonsense he now encouraged his mother to throw in the trash. He was mocking the very intelligence that was paying for his rent. I thought back to the day I met him. I was running. I had fled my engagement to Julian. A man my father had chosen. A man who saw me as a corporate asset. I had run with nothing but a backpack and the cash in my pocket. I was terrified. I was convinced my father's security team was just hours behind me. I was sitting in a Boston bus station. Truly vulnerable for the first time in my life. Liam had appeared. Like a dream, he offered me a coffee. He offered me a place to stay. No strings attached. He said he understood what it was like to be suffocated by family. He was my savior. That memory was a fraud. It was all a lie. I did not know it yet. But I would soon learn the truth. My family's private security had found me, but instead of taking me back, they had found Liam. They had paid him $50,000 to accidentally meet me, to give me a place to stay, and to monitor me. He was not my savior. He was my handler. He was taking money from the very people I was fleeing. And all the while, I was gratefully making him dinner. I was cleaning his apartment. I was sleeping on his couch, believing I owed him my life for his kindness. Eleanor called me a charity case. The irony was, I was the one paying for all of this. I was the charity. I also had a job. A menial job. I, Dr. Anna Zettner, a molecular biologist with a PhD from MIT, was serving lattes for $9 an hour. Eleanor mocked this job relentlessly. She called me the coffee girl. She lamented to Liam. Loudly. about how her brilliant scientist son was tied down to a barista. I took the job to maintain my cover. I took the job because Liam complained constantly that we needed the money for his research. I woke up at 4 a.m. every morning. My hands, which were trained to use a scanning electron microscope, were now stained with espresso and scalded from hot milk. I endured the screams of commuters. Liam, of course, presented this as my choice. He would kiss my forehead. He would say, "It is only temporary. Anna, just until my big break. I admire your work ethic so much." His admiration was another layer of his betrayal. While I was waking up at 4 a.m., he was sleeping until 10. He was using the money I earned at the coffee shop, and the much larger allowance I secretly funneled into his accounts to fund his real life. He was not just funding research. He was taking his real girlfriend, a colleague from his lab, to expensive lunches. He would complain to her about how embarrassing my job was. My paycheck, the one I earned from that menial job, was paying for the gasoline he used to drive to those lunches. I would remember this. I would remember the smell of burnt coffee and the constant, dull ache in my feet. I would remember the humiliation. And I vowed, internally, that I would make sure, one day, it was the only work Eleanor Burke could find. Well, Eleanor snapped. Her voice broke my concentration. Are you going to just stand there? Or are you going to clean up that trash you made? Liam said nothing from the couch. He just turned up the volume on the television. He was my partner. He was the man I was sacrificing my career for. And he was letting his mother call me trash. This was the breaking point. The debt of gratitude was officially, finally, paid in full. I moved. I walked calmly to the kitchen trash can. Eleanor smirked. Victorious. She thought she had broken me. She thought I was about to cry over the garbage. This was her final, triumphant humiliation. She was forcing me to retrieve my worthless work from the bin, like a dog fetching a stick. They both thought this was my defeat. They thought they were looking at a broken, simple-minded girl. They had no idea they were looking at a scientist, and a scientist always has a control group. I reached into the trash can. I pulled out the stack of notes, damp with coffee grounds. The notes in the trash were the decoy. They were real, but they were not important. The real research, the Project Chimera thesis, was on a secure, encrypted USB drive, a drive they would never find. These notes, they were just data. And this, all of this, was just an experiment. I held the damp notes. I looked Eleanor dead in the eye. I did not smile. I did not cry. My hands did not shake. I felt an icy calm settle over me. You are right, Eleanor, I said. My voice was even, thank you for clarifying my role. I walked past her. I went to the sink to wash the filth off my hands. I could feel her staring at my back. Her victory had turned to ash. My lack of tears, my cold compliance, had honorable her. She had expected a victim. She had found something else entirely. Eleanor's visit left a poison in the air. Her words echoed in the small apartment. Ungrateful. Liability. Get rid of her. Liam, who had been a rock of comfort, became a block of ice. He was paranoid. He became jumpy, irritable, and cold. He stopped thanking me for dinner. He stopped kissing my forehead when I left for my 4 a.m. barista shift. He just watched me. He watched me with a new ardess. Calculating suspicion. His mother's warning had done its work. It had triggered the part of him that was weak. The part that was terrified of being seen as a failure. He now saw me not as a partner, but as a risk. I knew this would happen. I had anticipated this. My feigned coldness with his mother was a calculated move. It was a test. I needed to know whose side he was on. His silence on the couch during her tirade had given me the answer. I had sacrificed my entire career. A doctor of molecular biology. He was working for $9 an hour. I was sacrificing my sleep, my dignity, and my hands, which ached constantly from the repetitive motion of the espresso machine. I was doing this, I told myself, to pay back the debt of him saving me at the bus station, a debt he was now repaying with contempt. He believed his own lie. He truly saw himself as the brilliant scientist, and me as the delusional charity case. He would talk about his research at night, using words I had taught him, theories I had explained to him, and I would nod and learn, all the while. The true anonymous grant that funded his entire life was my own secret trust fund. I was paying him to mock my own intelligence. He was using the money I gave him, the money from the family I fled, to build a life that he now believed I was threatening. I remembered the day I set the trap. Weeks ago, I bought a new, high-capacity USB drive. I labeled it Project Chimera, Final. On it, I loaded my thesis, but I loaded an incomplete version. It contained the revolutionary sequencing algorithm, the bait, but it was missing the final, crucial validation key. Without that key, the algorithm would produce flawed models. It would look brilliant on paper, but it would fail every single validation test. It was a beautiful, intricate, and useless piece of code, and I attached a micro-tracker to the drive's firmware, a tracker that would ping my phone the moment it was accessed from any new device. I placed that USB drive in an old box of textbooks. I put it under a stack of my scribbling nonsense that Eleanor had not yet thrown away. I knew Liam's arrogance. I knew his paranoia. I knew he would eventually search my things. He was too weak not to. The day came. I left for my barista shift. The moment the apartment door clicked shut, I knew he would move. I was 3 blocks away, walking in the pre-dawn cold. When my phone buzzed, not a text, a silent notification. USB, Chimera, decoy accessed, device L, IAM, BUR, KEL, APT, OP. I stopped walking. I did not gasp. I did not cry. My body did not react at all. It just felt a cold, clean certainty. The debt of gratitude was officially gone. Now, there was only the accounting. The fish had taken the bait. Back at the apartment, Liam was triumphant. He had torn my room apart. A violation I had expected. He found the box. He found the drive. And when he saw the label Project Chimera, his heart leaped. He plugged it in. His laptop screen lit up with my life's work. He did not think, "Wow, Anna is a genius." He did not think, "This is her work." His arrogance, his deeply rooted contempt for me as a simple coffee girl, made that conclusion impossible. His mind went immediately to the only explanation it could accept. She stole this. This must be it. This must be the secret she has been hiding. She found this somewhere. She stole it from a real scientist. And now, it was his. He was rescuing this brilliant work from the delusional charity case who was too stupid to even know what she had. I had sacrificed my dignity, my reputation, my entire identity. To live this simple life with him, I had endured the mockery of his mother. I had endured the condescension of his friends. I had endured his vile, gentle praise, which was the worst betrayal of all. He would praise my work ethic at the coffee shop, all while he was sleeping in. He would praise my simple loyalty. He was using that simple loyalty as a cover. While I was serving coffee, he was using my secret money to build his career. He was using my stolen research, which he thought I had also stolen, as his own. He was a parasite feeding on a host, all the while complaining that the host was not good enough for him. He was on the phone. He was calling his mother. He was breathless. "Mom, you will not believe it. I found it. The breakthrough. The real breakthrough. That girl, she had it. She was hiding it." He was already building the pitch deck. He was copying my flawed charts. He was pasting my incomplete data. He was practicing his speech. He was a man who had just found a winning lottery ticket. He did not care who he had to rob to get it. He was already thinking of the next step. This was too big for his small university lab. This was a billion-dollar idea. This needed real money. This needed the biggest, most ruthless venture capital firm in Boston. He was going to pitch to Thorn Capital. Liam was a new man. He was electric. He was a thief who believed he was a king. He spent 2 days locked in his room. The room I paid for. Working on the pitch deck. He used the high-end laptop I had bought him for his birthday. A gift I purchased with 3 months of my barista savings. I had told myself it was an investment in his future. A future he was now building on the back of my stolen life's work. He finally emerged. His eyes bright with stolen confidence. His mother, Eleanor, was there. She had arrived dressed for a coronation, wearing a string of pearls. They had set up a projector in our tiny living room. "Anna, darling," Liam said. His voice was slick with condescension. "You should watch this. You might actually learn something." Eleanor smirked from the armchair. "Oh. Let her watch." "Liam, it is important for her to see what real success looks like. It might inspire her to do something more than froth milk." This was the attack. The practice pitch. He was not practicing for feedback. He was performing for an audience of one. His mother. To prove he was the master of the charity case. I remembered the countless nights I had spent editing his actual papers. I had sacrificed my own sleep, my own mental energy, to help him structure his arguments. He was a mediocre researcher. At best, his writing was clumsy. I had to teach him the basic principles of scientific notation. I did this patiently, because I believed I owed him. I believed this was the small price for the safety he had given me. Now, he was standing in front of the projector. He was using the very laptop I had paid for. He was presenting my theories. And he was mispronouncing the terminology. He kept saying polypeptide when he meant oligonucleotide. It was a basic first-year student error, and he was saying it with such complete, unearned arrogance. He clicked to a slide showing one of my protein models, the very model I knew was flawed without the validation key. "And this," he said, puffing out his chest, "this is the real magic. This predictive model will change everything." Eleanor was beaming. "Oh, Liam, it is just brilliant. You truly are a genius. All that work. You deserve this." Liam soaked it in. He looked at me. Sitting on the cheap sofa, he expected me to be in awe. He expected me to be cowed, impressed, and utterly confused by the complex science. He needed me to be stupid so he could feel smart. He needed his mother to see him put me, the delusional girl, in my place. This was his victory lap. He was using my work to humiliate me. He was using the money I secretly gave him, the anonymous grant I had arranged, to fund his theft. While I was waking up at 4 a.m., my hands aching, my mind dull with exhaustion. I was paying for this. I was paying for the laptop. I was paying for the projector. I was paying for the rent on the very room he was using to perform his grand betrayal. I was funding my own execution. He finished. The final slide faded. He turned, his face flushed with triumph. "So," he said, looking directly at me. "See, darling, that is what real intelligence looks like. Try to keep up." Eleanor cackled. A sharp, ugly sound. They waited. This was the moment the charity case was supposed to applaud. I kept my voice soft. I kept it helpful. I did not move from the sofa. "Oh, Liam," I said, my voice barely a whisper. That was very impressive. But I did notice one small thing. Liam's smile faltered. "What?" "That protein model you were so excited about," I said. Still quiet. It is wrong. The molecular binding calculation. You have it inverted. It will not fold correctly. It will fail in validation. Every single time. The air left the room. Eleanor's smirk froze. Liam stared at me. He was not confused. He was not curious. He was pale. He knew I was right. He knew. Because he had been running the validation tests on my flawed data for the last 48 hours. And they had been failing. Every single time. He thought it was a bug. He thought he could fix it. He never. In his wildest dreams. Imagined the coffee girl could see it. His expectation had been my applause. His reality was his exposure. I saw the sequence of his thoughts. The arrogance. The confusion. The panic. And then, the rage. The rage of a narcissist being exposed. You, he whispered. You are trying to sabotage me. Liam. She is jealous, Eleanor shrieked. Standing up. She is a jealous, stupid girl. And she is trying to ruin you. Is that it? Anna, Liam yelled. He was advancing on me now. You are jealous. You see me winning. And you cannot stand it. So you try to sabotage me. I thought back to the bus station. The man who offered me a coffee. The man who said, "No. Strings attached." The man who promised to keep me safe. I had sacrificed my name. I had sacrificed my career. I had sacrificed my own father's billion-dollar legacy. All to feel safe with this man. A man who was now advancing on me. His face purple with rage. Because I had pointed out a simple fact about my own work. He was close now. I could smell the alcohol on his breath. You. Delusional. Charity case. He spat. And then he slapped me. It was not a shove. It was a full, open-handed strike. My head snapped to the side. The sound of it echoed in the tiny apartment. My cheek exploded with heat. Eleanor said nothing. I heard her. I think I heard her applaud. A single, sharp clap. I turned my head back. I looked at him. I did not cry. I did not flinch. I just looked at him. And in my mind, a final, cold ledger was closed. The debt of gratitude was paid. It was paid in full. With interest. Liam's hand was still raised. He was breathing hard. He looked shocked at his own violence. He had finally done it. He had broken the one rule. He had gone too far. And he had just given me exactly what I needed. I stood up, calmly. I picked up my purse. I did not say a word. Where are you going? He demanded. Anna, I am talking to you. I walked to the door. I opened it. You walk out that door. Anna. And you are done. He screamed. You will have nothing. You will be on the street. I paused. I looked back at him. At his mother. I let them see my face. The red mark on my cheek. I let them memorize it. I know. I said. And I left. I walked out of the apartment. I did not run. I walked. I went to the coffee shop. Not to work. I sat in a booth. I ordered a black coffee. I took out my phone. And I sent an anonymous, encrypted email to the executive assistant of Julian Thorne. The email was simple. It said, the 10 a.m. biotech pitch from Liam Burke is using stolen intellectual property. Project Chimera. You are being defrauded. The next morning, I was at work. My cheek was still a dull throb. A faint purple mark I had hidden with concealer. I was at the espresso machine. My hands, moving on autopilot. 4:30 a.m. The steam hissed. The smell of burnt beans filled the air. I had not slept. After I sent the email, I had gone to a cheap motel, paid in cash, and simply sat on the bed. I was watching the plan unfold in my mind. The email was the first move, the anonymous tip to Julian Thorne's office. It was a simple, logical step. It would not stop the meeting. Julian Thorne did not cancel meetings based on anonymous tips. But it would put a seed of doubt in his mind. It would make him look closer. It would make him hunt for a flaw. And I knew Julian. He was a predator. He loved the hunt. I remembered my engagement to him. It was not a romance. It was a merger. My father, the patriarch of Zettner Pharmaceuticals, had arranged it. He wanted to merge my research, Project Chimera, with Julian's venture capital empire, Thorne Capital. They were going to create a new biotech division, and I was the price of the deal. Julian had looked at me during our engagement dinner. Not like a man looks at his future wife, but like a man looks at a prized racehorse. He saw me as an asset. A brilliant, valuable, and slightly uncontrollable asset that he needed to break. He was ruthless. He was cold. He was everything my father admired. I had endured his condescension for 6 months. I had sacrificed my own will, my own voice, trying to be the good daughter. He would mock my ideas in public, only to present them as his own in private board meetings. He would correct my posture. He would critique my clothing. He was trying to sand down all my edges, to make me a perfect, polished CEO's wife, while I was dying inside. My father was beaming. He saw a strong hand taming his willful daughter. That was the life I had fled. I had run from Julian. And now, he was walking into my coffee shop. The bell on the door chimed. It was 8:30 a.m. The morning rush was over. I was wiping down the counter. He walked in. Tall, impeccably dressed in a $9,000 suit, and flanked by 2 associates. He did not look like a man who bought his own coffee. He was here for the 10 a.m. pitch. Thorne Capital's headquarters was across the street. This was the nearest cafe. He did not see me at first. He was on his phone. He snapped his fingers at the counter. A gesture of pure, unthinking entitlement. 4 espressos. Now, he said to the air. I did not move. I just looked at him. His associate, a nervous-looking man, finally noticed me. Ma'am, the coffee. I just kept staring at Julian. Julian finally looked up. His patience gone. Did you not hear me? I said. He stopped. His eyes focused on me. The phone in his hand lowered. The blood drained from his face. I saw the micro-expressions. Shock, disbelief, and then something dark. Amusement. Well? Julian Thorne said. His voice was a low purr. Anna Zettner. My runaway bride. Serving coffee. How? Rustic. His associates looked terrified. They had no idea who I was. This was the attack. The humiliation. He was a man who had lost his most valuable asset. And he had just found it. Stained with coffee. Working for minimum wage. He expected me to be ashamed. He expected me to be terrified. He expected me to burst into tears. To beg him not to tell my father. He expected the same fear he had always inspired in me. But the woman he was looking at was not the same woman who had fled. The woman he was looking at had spent the last year living a life he could not even imagine. She had been betrayed by a savior she had trusted. She had been slapped in the face by a weak, pathetic man. She was done with being a victim. I put my cleaning rag down. I leaned forward. Hello. Julian. I said. My voice was cold. It was clear. It did not shake. He smiled. So this is where you ran to. A coffee shop. May God. Anna. It is almost poetic. All that intelligence. All that breeding. Wasted. I assume you are here for the 10 a.m. biotech pitch. I said, ignoring him, the one from Liam Burke. His smile faltered. His eyes sharpened. The amusement was gone. Now, it was just business. How do you know that? He is the man I live with. I said. Julian's face was a mask of stone. You live with. a postdoc researcher, and he is about to pitch you my stolen thesis. I said, Project Chimera. I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. He remembered the anonymous email from last night. Stolen intellectual property. Project Chimera. He had thought it was a prank. Now, it was a data point. He stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time. The delusional charity case who worked at the coffee shop, the runaway bride, the source of the anonymous tip, the owner of Project Chimera. All these pieces clicked into place in his mind. He was not a fool like Liam. He was a predator, and he saw a new angle. He saw an opportunity. Liam Burke. The man I had sacrificed my identity for. The man who had slapped me just last night. Chose that exact moment to walk into the coffee shop. He was dressed in his own cheap suit. The one I had paid for. He was holding his pitch deck. He saw me. And then he saw me talking to the most powerful venture capitalist in Boston. Liam's face went white. He thought I was here to ambush him. He thought I was... What? Warning the VC, begging for money. He could not comprehend the situation. He just saw his charity case talking to the kingmaker. Anna, Liam said. His voice was a weak croak. What? What are you doing? You are bothering this man. He was trying to save me. He was trying to manage the delusional girl in front of the most important man of his life. Julian looked from Liam's panicked, sweaty face to my cold, calm one. He understood. Oh. He understood everything. He saw the entire dynamic. The weak, arrogant thief, and the hidden, powerful heiress. He smiled. It was a true, cruel smile. He was electrified. He had found his runaway asset, and she had just handed him a weapon. Bothering me, Julian said. His voice smooth as silk. He turned his full attention to Liam. Not at all, Miss. Tsetna was just telling me about the 10 a.m. pitch. Liam's jaw dropped. Tsetna. This is going to be amusing, Julian said, his voice dropping low. For only me to hear. He turned back to me. The 10 a.m. pitch is still on. Liam Burke will present his discovery. And you. He paused. He looked at my uniform. You will serve the coffee. The next morning, I was at work. My cheek was still a dull throb. A faint purple mark I had hidden with concealer. I was at the espresso machine. My hands moving on autopilot. 4:30 a.m. The steam hissed. The smell of burnt beans filled the air. I had not slept. After I sent the email, I had gone to a cheap motel, paid in cash, and simply sat on the bed. I was watching the plan unfold in my mind. The email was the first move, the anonymous tip to Julian Thorne's office. It was a simple, logical step. It would not stop the meeting. Julian Thorne did not cancel meetings based on anonymous tips, but it would put a seed of doubt in his mind. It would make him look closer. It would make him hunt for a flaw. And I knew Julian. He was a predator. He loved the hunt. I remembered my engagement to him. It was not a romance. It was a merger. My father, the patriarch of Zettner Pharmaceuticals, had arranged it. He wanted to merge my research, Project Chimera, with Julian's venture capital empire, Thorne Capital. They were going to create a new biotech division, and I was the price of the deal. Julian had looked at me during our engagement dinner. Not like a man looks at his future wife, but like a man looks at a prized racehorse. He saw me as an asset, a brilliant, valuable, and slightly uncontrollable asset that he needed to break. He was ruthless. He was cold. He was everything my father admired. I had endured his condescension for 6 months. I had sacrificed my own will, my own voice. Trying to be the good daughter, he would mock my ideas in public, only to present them as his own in private board meetings. He would correct my posture. He would critique my clothing. He was trying to sand down all my edges, to make me a perfect, polished CEO's wife, while I was dying inside. My father was beaming. He saw a strong hand taming his willful daughter. That was the life I had fled. I had run from Julian. And now, he was walking into my coffee shop. The bell on the door chimed. It was 8:30 a.m. The morning rush was over. I was wiping down the counter. He walked in. Tall, impeccably dressed in a $9,000 suit, and flanked by 2 associates. He did not look like a man who bought his own coffee. He was here for the 10 a.m. pitch. Thorn Capital's headquarters was across the street. This was the nearest cafe. He did not see me at first. He was on his phone. He snapped his fingers at the counter. A gesture of pure, unthinking entitlement. 4 espressos. Now, he said to the air. I did not move. I just looked at him. His associate, a nervous-looking man, finally noticed me. Ma'am, the coffee. I just kept staring at Julian. Julian finally looked up. His patience gone. Did you not hear me? I said. He stopped. His eyes focused on me. The phone in his hand lowered. The blood drained from his face. I saw the micro-expressions. Shock. Disbelief. And then, something dark. Amusement. Well, Julian Thorne said. His voice was a low purr. Anna Zettner. My runaway bride. Serving coffee. How? Rustic. His associates looked terrified. They had no idea who I was. This was the attack. The humiliation. He was a man who had lost his most valuable asset. And he had just found it. Stained with coffee. Working for minimum wage. He expected me to be ashamed. He expected me to be terrified. He expected me to burst into tears. To beg him not to tell my father. He expected the same fear he had always inspired in me. But the woman he was looking at was not the same woman who had fled. The woman he was looking at had spent the last year living a life he could not even imagine. She had been betrayed by a savior she had trusted. She had been slapped in the face by a weak, pathetic man. She was done with being a victim. I put my cleaning rag down. I leaned forward. Hello, Julian, I said. My voice was cold. It was clear. It did not shake. He smiled. So this is where you ran to. A coffee shop. Me God. Anna. It is almost poetic. All that intelligence. All that breeding. Wasted. I assume you are here for the 10 a.m. biotech pitch. I said, ignoring him. The one from Liam Burke. His smile faltered. His eyes sharpened. The amusement was gone. Now. It was just business. How do you know that? He is the man I live with. I said. Julian's face was a mask of stone. You live with a postdoc researcher. And he is about to pitch you my stolen thesis. I said, Project Chimera. I saw it. The flicker in his eyes. He remembered the anonymous email from last night. Stolen intellectual property. Project Chimera. He had thought it was a prank. Now, it was a data point. He stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time. The delusional charity case who worked at the coffee shop, the runaway bride, the source of the anonymous tip, the owner of Project Chimera. All these pieces clicked into place in his mind. He was not a fool like Liam. He was a predator. And he saw a new angle. He saw an opportunity. Liam Burke. The man I had sacrificed my identity for. The man who had slapped me just last night. Chose that exact moment to walk into the coffee shop. He was dressed in his own cheap suit. The one I had paid for. He was holding his pitch deck. He saw me. And then he saw me talking to the most powerful venture capitalist in Boston. Liam's face went white. He thought I was here to ambush him. He thought I was. What? Warning the VC, begging for money. He could not comprehend the situation. He just saw his charity case talking to the kingmaker. Anna, Liam said. His voice was a weak croak. What? What are you doing? You are bothering this man. He was trying to save me. He was trying to manage the delusional girl in front of the most important man of his life. Julian looked from Liam's panicked, sweaty face to my cold, calm one. He understood. Oh. He understood everything. He saw the entire dynamic. The weak, arrogant thief, and the hidden, powerful heiress. He smiled. It was a true, cruel smile. He was electrified. He had found his runaway asset, and she had just handed him a weapon. Bothering me, Julian said. His voice smooth as silk. He turned his full attention to Liam. Not at all, Miss Tsetna. I was just telling me about the 10 a.m. pitch. Liam's jaw dropped. Tsetna. This is going to be amusing, Julian said, his voice dropping low. For only me to hear. He turned back to me. The 10 a.m. pitch is still on. Liam Burke will present his discovery. And you? He paused. He looked at my uniform. You will serve the coffee. Liam's scream echoed off the marble and glass. I saved her. She owes me. He was pointing at me. His face a mask of purple rage and absolute panic. His accusation hung in the silent boardroom. All eyes were on me. The stone-faced VCs, the terrified associates, and Julian Thorne, who was watching me. Not with surprise, but with a cold, analytical amusement. He was enjoying the show. Liam was a cornered animal, and he had just lunged with his last remaining weapon, the debt of gratitude. He was weaponizing my own sense of honor against me. He was invoking the memory of the bus station. He was reminding me of the man who had offered me a coffee, a couch, and safety. He expected me to crumble. He expected me to confirm his story. He expected the old Anna, the charity case, to be paralyzed by her own sense of loyalty. He needed me to be weak, to be the delusional runaway he had just claimed I was. I had sacrificed an entire year of my life for that debt. I, Dr. Anna Zettner, had woken up at 4 a.m. to steam milk for $9 an hour to repay that debt. I had cooked. I had cleaned. I had scrubbed his floors and patiently edited his mediocre research papers. I had endured the relentless, cruel humiliations from his mother. I had sacrificed my dignity, my career, and my self-respect, all because I believed I owed this man for his simple act of kindness. But his kindness was a lie. It was a fraud. That memory, the one I had clung to, the memory of the kind stranger in the bus station, was a fabrication. It was a stage play, and he was just a hired actor. I thought of the $50,000, the money Julian had told me about in the coffee shop, the money my father's private security team had paid Liam to accidentally find me. He was not my savior. He was my handler. He was a warden in a cage I did not even know I was in. He was a parasite. He had been a parasite from the first moment. He had taken money from my father's team to watch me. He had taken my anonymous grant money, which I funneled to him out of my own misguided generosity. He had taken my barista salary to pay for his gasoline. He had taken my life's work, my blood, Project Chimera. And now, after all that, he had the audacity to stand there, in a room full of the most powerful people in Boston, and claim that I owed him. He called me a liar. He, the man who was a breathing, walking, sweating fabrication. He was a hollow man, built entirely from my money, my intelligence, and my misplaced gratitude. He called me nothing. He, the man who was about to become nothing. I looked at him. I let him see the coldness in my eyes. I let him see the coffee girl he had mocked, the charity case he had slapped, and I let him see the executioner. He is right about one thing, I said. My voice was clear. It was cold. It did not shake. It cut through the silence of the boardroom. Liam's face flickered. He thought, For a second, that he had won, that I was about to confirm his story. I was homeless. I continued. I was running. I turned my head, just slightly, and looked directly at Julian Thorne. I was running. From him. Julian's smile did not waver, but his eyes hardened. The show was no longer about him. It was about me. I turned back to Liam. His brief moment of hope was already collapsing into confusion. But you did not save me. Liam. I said. What he whispered. Yes. I did. The bus station. You were crying, I bought you. You were paid. I said. It was a statement. A fact. An execution. You were paid $50,000 by my family's private security team. Liam's face. It was not a human expression. It was a total system collapse. The blood. The arrogance. The rage. It all just evaporated. He was a puppet whose strings had just been cut. What? What? No. He stammered. That is not true. They paid you to accidentally meet me. I continued. My voice relentless. They paid you to give me a place to stay. They paid you to monitor me. You were not my savior. Liam, you were my keeper. The room was silent. Liam was gaping, his mouth opening and closing. But no sound was coming out. He was replaying his entire year. He was replaying his brilliant life. He was seeing the anonymous grant. He was seeing my menial job. He was seeing all of it. Not as a sign of his superiority, but as a long, intricate, and humiliating con. A con he was not even the master of. He was the mark. You knew, he whispered. He was not speaking to me. He was in his own shattered world. I just found out. I said, but you always knew. You took their money, and you took my money, and you took my work. You called me a charity case while I was paying your rent. You called me a parasite while you were living off my money and my mind. I took a step toward him. He physically recoiled. You are a thief. Liam, you are a fraud. And you are, and always have been, a pawn. That was the word that broke him. Pawn. He looked at Julian. The kingmaker. The man with the real power. He looked at me. The heiress. The real genius. And he finally saw himself. He was nothing. He was the fool. No. He whispered. No. No. Anna. Please. Julian Thorne finally moved. He had seen enough. The asset was secure. The trash needed to be taken out. He pressed a silent button on his desk console. Dr. Burke, Julian said. His voice bored. Your pitch has been rejected. Your presence is no longer required. The boardroom doors opened. 2 security guards, large men in black suits, stepped inside. Liam did not even see them. He was still staring at me. His eyes hollowed out. Anna, please. I loved you. It was my mother. She. Get him out, Julian said. The guards grabbed Liam's arms. He did not fight. He was a hollow shell. He was completely broken. They dragged him. And his cheap laptop. Out of the cathedral of glass. They dragged him out of my life. The door clicked shut. I was left alone in the room with Julian Thorne and his silent VCs. The show was over. The execution was complete. Liam. Exposed. Blacklisted. And now realizing his entire life was a lie. Was gone. He had nowhere to go. He had no one. No. He had one person. He would go to the only person who had ever truly believed in his genius. He would go to his mother. And I knew Eleanor Burke would not take this news well. The door clicked shut. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. Liam was gone. I was left alone in the cathedral of glass with Julian Thorne and his silent, stone-faced associates. The show was over. The execution was complete. Julian turned his cold, analytical gaze to me. The amused, theatrical host was gone. This was the predator. This was the CEO. He was looking at me. Not as a woman. Not as his runaway fiancée. But as his new, most valuable asset. "Doctor, Tsetna," he said. His voice, void of all emotion. "It seems we have a great deal to discuss. Let's talk about the real Project Chimera. And let's talk about your new contract." I had just escaped one prison. The prison of gratitude I had built around myself with Liam. I had run from the prison of my father's expectations. And now, I had walked directly into the most expensive, most ruthless prison of all, Julian's. He was a man exactly like my father. He did not want a partner. He wanted a patent. He did not see a person. He saw a profit margin. While I was still processing the trauma of Liam's betrayal, the humiliation, the violence, Julian was already calculating the multi-billion-dollar valuation of my work. But I was no longer the girl who had run. I was no longer the girl who served coffee. I was a scientist, and I would treat this as a new, complex, and hostile experiment. Liam, broken and hollowed out, had gone straight to the only person who would listen, the only person who had ever truly believed in his fabricated genius. He went to his mother. Eleanor's reaction was not grief. It was not shame. It was pure, unadulterated narcissistic rage. Her attack began 2 days later. She could not attack me in the boardroom. She could not attack me financially. So she used the only weapon she had left. She went public. She launched a vicious, disparate social media campaign. She created a blog. She wrote posts on every platform. Boston heiress Anna Zettner destroys innocent researcher. I remembered all the times she had insulted me, all the sacrifices I had made, living in her son's apartment, enduring her snobbery. I had scrubbed their floors. I had cooked their meals. I had patiently, quietly endured being called a delusional charity case and scribbling nonsense. I had accepted her contempt as the price of my debt. And now, she was painting me as the villain. She painted me as a black widow, a corporate monster, a cold, calculating Zettner heiress who had seduced her brilliant, innocent son, Liam. She claimed I had stolen his research. And then, when he confronted me, I had used my family's power to destroy him. She was a masterful liar. She wrote about how Liam had found me on the street, how he had taken me in, how he had nourished me. She was using the exact language of victimhood. She was twisting my own sacrifice against me. She was calling me the thief. She, the woman who had cheered as her son, slapped me across the face. She, the woman who had lived, indirectly, off my own secret money. She was presenting her son, a man who had committed theft, fraud, and physical assault, as a victim. And the public, always eager to tear down a rich girl, began to listen. The comments were brutal. Parasite, gold digger. She stole that poor boy's work. Julian's associates were in a full-blown panic. This is bad PR. One of them stammered, holding a tablet showing Eleanor's blog. This is a narrative problem. It threatens the asset. They expected me to be hysterical. They expected me to cry, to issue a denial, to hide. Julian summoned me to his office. He was not amused. He was furious. This is a mess. Anna, he snapped, throwing the tablet onto his desk. This, Noise, it is bad for business. He expected me to be the problem. He expected me to be weak. I looked at him calmly. You are right. Julian, it is a mess. That is why I need you to boost it. His head snapped up. The anger on his face was replaced by a sharp, sudden confusion. What? I hired a public relations firm this morning, I said. My voice even. I am not fighting the slander. I am amplifying it. Julian stared at me. He was recalculating. He was, perhaps for the first time, seeing the real Anna Zettner, not the asset, the player. I am paying them, I continued, to promote Eleanor's posts. I am running ads linked to her blog. I want every investor, every journalist, and every high society gossip in Boston to see exactly what she is saying. Why? Julian asked. His voice was no longer angry. It was quiet. It was curious. Because, I said, right now, she is just a sympathetic, grieving mother. The public is on her side. But I know things she does not know. I know. I know about her charity auction. I know about her debts. In 48 hours, when the real story breaks, she will not be a grieving mother. She will be a proven liar, a fraud, and an embezzler. And I want her as high as possible, as public as possible, before she falls. A slow, cold smile spread across Julian Thorne's face. It was not a smile of warmth. It was a smile of recognition. He was not angry at me for the scandal. He was furious at the Burkes for being so low rent about it. This noise, Julian hissed, repeating himself, but with a new meaning. This stupid, gauche noise. It is a distraction. They are threatening my asset. He looked at me. He had found his runaway fiancée, but he had also found a partner in cruelty. Shut them up, he said. It was not a request. It was a command. Shut them up permanently. This was the pressure I needed. This was the command from my new master. This was the trigger for my next quote. And far more brutal. Attack. I will, I said. I know exactly how. My promise to Julian was a contract, sealed in the cold air between us. I will. I know exactly how. He did not ask questions. He did not need to. He had just commanded his new asset to solve a problem. And I, Dr. Anna Zettner, had just agreed. I left his office. I walked to the new, sterile, glass-walled office he had assigned me at Thorne Capital. It was on the same floor as his. I was no longer the runaway. I was no longer the barista. I was a prisoner in a much more expensive cage, but a cage with a very, very good internet connection. I sat at a black marble desk. I opened a new file in encrypted laptop, and I pulled up the files. The files I had been sitting on for 6 months. The complete, unfiltered, and deeply illegal accounting books of the Burke Foundation for Young Scientists. Eleanor's charity, her crown jewel, her entire identity. I remembered the last time she had thrown a fundraiser for it. It was a small, gaudy affair in their cramped apartment. I was forced to work it. I was the charity case. After all, I had to serve cheap wine and appetizers that I had cooked myself. Using my own barista money, I had to smile. I had to stand there, invisible, while Eleanor paraded around, collecting checks from her local friends. She had paused, in the middle of the party, to pat me on the head. Literally, she had patted my head. Like a dog, she said to her friends, "This is Anna, my son's little project. We are teaching her about the importance of giving back. Are we not, dear?" Her friends had tittered. I had smiled. I had sacrificed my dignity, my pride, my very name, to be her prop. I, a woman who could buy and sell this entire apartment building 100 times over, was her little project. And all the while, I knew where the money was going. I had seen the apartment. I had seen her expensive new shoes. I had seen Liam's new designer clothes. I had been secretly funding their entire lives. First with the anonymous grant, and then with my own meager paycheck. But I was not their only source of income. They were double-dipping. They were taking my money, and they were also stealing from their own donors. The Burke Foundation for Young Scientists was a fraud. It was a financial black hole. It was a slush fund. I had found the real ledgers. I had found them when I was cleaning Liam's office. Back when I was still the helpful girlfriend. I had seen the transfers. Donations went in, and consulting fees went out. Fees paid directly to Eleanor. Fees that paid for her spa days. Fees that paid for Liam's expensive dinners with his other girlfriend. They were a family of parasites. They were using my sacrifices to live. And they were using her friend's goodwill to live extravagantly. She was using a fake charity, built on lies, to call me a charity case. I took a sip of water. I did not feel rage. I did not feel anything. This was just data. This was the next step in the experiment. Julian wanted me to shut them up. Eleanor was the source of the noise. Her slander campaign, the one I had paid to amplify, was now reaching its peak. My PR firm had done its job. Eleanor's blog posts were everywhere. Heiress destroys poor. Innocent boy. The public, just as I predicted, was on her side. They were tearing Anna Zettner to shreds. I had sacrificed my public reputation, intentionally, to build the height of her platform. Now, I would pull the legs out from under it. I opened a new, encrypted email. I addressed it to a name, Sarah Jensen, a respected, feared, and Pulitzer Prize-winning financial journalist at the Boston Globe, a woman who hated the Boston old money and new money elite with equal passion, a woman who had a reputation for destroying frauds. I attached the files, the complete ledgers, the bank transfers, the hidden accounts, everything. My email was simple. Ms. Jensen, you have been following the Anna Zettner story. You have seen the slander campaign by Eleanor Burke, the grieving mother. You might be interested to see what that grieving mother is really doing. Look at the Burke Foundation. Look where the money for young scientists actually went. The public is being lied to. I pressed send. The expectation was set. Eleanor, at this very moment, was not checking her email. She was too busy. She was planning her masterpiece, the annual Burke Foundation charity auction. It was the biggest social event of her year. It was the event that validated her entire existence. She was expecting her greatest triumph. She was expecting to be the belle of the ball, the wronged mother who was bravely carrying on. She would dismiss any inquiry from a journalist as more slander from me. She would feel untouchable. I remembered last year's auction. I had been forced to attend. Liam had insisted. It is good for you to network. Anna, meet my mother's friends. I had to stand in a rented dress, 2 sizes too big. And I had to smile. I had to listen to Eleanor give a speech, a tearful speech, to the future she had said, raising a glass of champagne, to the brilliant young scientists, like my son, Liam, who will change the world. I had stood in the back. I had sacrificed my own career, my real career as a scientist, to be there. I was a ghost at her party, and I had watched her. I watched her toast a fake future, a future built on my stolen work. I watched her collect thousands of dollars in donations. Money I knew was going straight into her personal general expenses account. She was a vampire, toasting to life. The story broke 48 hours later. It was not a small article. It was the front page of the Boston Globe. The Burke Foundation's black hole, a tale of embezzlement, lies, and social climbing. Sarah Jensen was not a fool. She had not just used my ledgers. She had cross-referenced them with the slander campaign. She painted a perfect picture. A picture of a desperate, narcissistic mother, launching a fake PR war against a billionaire heiress to create a smokescreen. A smokescreen to hide her own years of criminal embezzlement. The article was a nuclear bomb. It was not just an article. It was a formal complaint. The journalist had, of course, forwarded all her findings to the Massachusetts Attorney General's office and to the IRS. Eleanor's phone began to ring, but it was not her friends offering support. It was her friends screaming. They were the donors. They were the ones who had been duped. They were not angry at me. They were furious with her. They had been made to look like fools. The Burke Foundation charity auction was canceled within an hour. The venue pulled out. The caterer pulled out. Her co-chairs resigned. Publicly. Eleanor Burke was not just humiliated. She was finished. She was socially dead. The IRS was auditing her. The DA was investigating her. And she had no money. The auction. Her last desperate hope for a cash infusion was gone. She and Liam were now pariahs. They were financially ruined. They were socially executed. And I knew. The foreclosure notices on their precious apartment, the one I had paid for, were already in the mail. They had only one asset left, the house itself. Their only hope now was to sell it fast and get enough cash to flee the country. They were ruined. The Boston Globe article had been a public execution. The IRS had frozen their accounts. The district attorney was convening a grand jury. Eleanor Burke, the grieving mother, was now the embezzlement queen. She and Liam were pariahs. They were socially dead. They were financially annihilated. And they were trapped in the apartment, which I had paid for. Watching the foreclosure notices pile up at the door. They had nothing. Except, they thought, for one last thing, one final, hidden asset, the house itself, the Burke family home. It was their golden parachute, their one last desperate hope. They called a high-end realtor, a man who had once fawned over Eleanor. They were in a panic. They needed to sell. They needed to sell it fast. They needed to liquidate it. Get the cash. And flee the country. They were already packing their designer bags. They were tasting the freedom. They were expecting to escape. They believed, with the last shred of their arrogance, that they could still get away. They were wrong. They were operating on a set of facts that I had rendered obsolete 3 years ago. I remembered the day I bought that house. It was not long after I had moved in. Back when I was still the grateful charity case. I was cleaning. I was always cleaning. I was scrubbing the grout in the master bathroom. A task Eleanor had insisted was good for my character. I was sacrificing my time, me dignity, my PhD-trained hands, to scrub her filth. All to repay the debt of living on her son's couch. Liam had praised me. "You are making this place a home, Anna," he had said, kissing my forehead. He was on his way out. To network. Wearing a shirt I had ironed. His mother had sneered. "It is the least you can do. Living here for free." They were liars. Both of them. While I was on my knees, scrubbing, I had found a stack of mail hidden under Liam's dresser. Not bills. They were foreclosure notices. They were not just hosting me. They were broke. They had been broke for years. They were about to be homeless. And they had hidden it from me. I, the charity case, was the only one in that house with any real money. While I was gratefully scrubbing their floors, me real lovers, the Zettner family lawyers, were already at work. I had made a call. I had created an anonymous LLC, AZ Holdings. I had them attend the foreclosure auction. I bought the house. I paid cash. I paid $50,000. It was the exact, poetic amount my family had paid Liam to babysit me. I was scrubbing the floors of a house I owned. They were mocking me for cleaning my own property. They were calling me a parasite while they were, quite literally, squatting in my investment. I had saved them from ruin, in secret. And their only response was to treat me like a servant. I had filed that information away. It was my asset. It was a trap I had set. Not out of malice, but out of a cold, scientific need for a control. Now, it was time to close the experiment. The realtor called them back. I can picture the scene. Liam and Eleanor, sitting among their packed Louis Vuitton bags, champagne probably already open, celebrating their escape. The realtor's voice was nervous. Mrs. Burke. Eleanor. There is a problem. I have run the title search. A problem, Eleanor would have snapped. Just sell it. We are in a hurry. I cannot. The realtor stammered. You do not own this property. The silence in that apartment must have been absolute. What do you mean? We do not own it. Liam would have yelled. It is my mother's house. According to the city records, the realtor said, this house was sold 3 years ago at a public foreclosure auction. The current owner is a private limited liability corporation, AZ Holdings. They would not have understood. AZ Holdings. It would have meant nothing to them. They would have thought it was a mistake. A clerical error. A new enemy they could not see. The doorbell rang. They were still in shock. They were staring at the phone. At the packed bags. The dream of escape was evaporating. The doorbell rang again. More insistent. Liam opened it. I was standing there. I was not in my barista uniform, stained with coffee and sweat. I was not in the simple cast-off sweaters Eleanor had gifted me, the ones that smelled of mothballs and her condescension. I remembered her charity. This is perfect for you. Dear, it is so practical. While I was forced to wear her trash, she was using the money I gave Liam to buy new designer clothes. She was funding her wardrobe with my sacrifice, and then gifting me her rejects. Today, I was wearing a Zettner suit, a dark blue, custom-tailored suit that was worth more than their car. I was flanked by 2 real security guards, not the rented pawns my father had used to monitor me. Eleanor came to the door. Her face was pale from the phone call. When she saw me, her first instinct was her only instinct. Contempt. You. She spat. What are you doing here? Get off my property. I held up a single legal document. It was an eviction notice. You are mistaken. Eleanor, I said. My voice was calm. It was not the voice of the coffee girl. It was the voice of the kingmaker Julian Thorne thought he was. This is my property. What? What are you talking about? Liam whispered. He was looking at my suit, at my guards. He was trying to reconcile the woman he slapped with the woman standing in front of him. AZ Holdings. I said, Anna Zettner. I bought this house 3 years ago. When you and your mother were too incompetent to pay your own mortgage, I let you stay. I let the words land. I let them understand. I was the anonymous benefactor. I was the one who had saved them. I was the charity case who had, in fact, been the patron all along. I considered it a small transaction. I continued, a repayment for the $50,000 my family paid you to babysit me, and for the $50,000 in anonymous grants I gave you, and for the barista salary you lived on. The debt is paid. Liam, the ledger is closed. They were beyond shock. This was annihilation. They were not just ruined. They were fools. Their entire lives. Their superiority. It was all a lie I had funded. You? You cannot. Eleanor Stampert. This is my home. You have 24 hours to vacate. I said. I handed the notice to my guard, who stepped forward and affixed it to their door. The new locks are being installed tomorrow at noon. Anything left inside will be considered a donation. I turned to leave. Eleanor's knees buckled. She fainted. A pathetic, theatrical collapse onto her packed designer bags. Liam did not move. He did not look at his mother. He did not look at me. He just stared. His face was a hollow mask of shock. He had lost his career. He had lost his reputation. He had lost his mother's charity. And now, He had lost his home. He had nothing. I watched him. I saw the hollowness in his eyes begin to change. It was a chemical reaction. The shock was being replaced by something else. A new, hotter, more focused energy. His eyes drifted past me to the skyline. He was staring at the glittering 42-story tower of Thorn Capital. He had lost everything. He had been exposed, ruined, and evicted. He had been revealed as a pawn. He fixed his gaze on the one person who had been sitting at the chessboard, the man who had moved the pieces, the man who had called him a problem. He was no longer staring at me. He was staring at Julian Thorn. Liam was a ghost. For a week. He and his mother had vanished. After the eviction, they had taken their designer bags and simply disappeared. They were homeless. They were penniless. The IRS had frozen Eleanor's accounts. The DA was building a case for embezzlement. They were pariahs. I was at Thorn Capital. I was no longer in the glass-walled cage on Julian's floor. I was in a secure lab, deep in the R&D sector, with a new title, Director of Special Projects. It was a title Julian had invented. It meant asset in waiting. I was in a meeting. A board meeting Julian had called. It was not a meeting. It was a performance. He was parading me. His doctor, Tsetna, in front of his other partners. I was the prize he had won. I was the runaway horse he had tamed. I was there to sit, to look brilliant, and to validate his power. I remembered the debt of gratitude, the one I had felt for Liam. I had sacrificed my name, my identity, and my dignity, all because I believed he had been kind to me. I had believed I owed him for that cup of coffee, for that spot on his couch. His kindness, I now knew, was a $50,000 contract. He was a hired hand. Julian's kindness was different. He had saved me from Liam. He had given me this new title. He had protected me from the slander. And in return, he expected me to sign a new contract. A contract that would give Thorn Capital exclusive, ironclad, 99-year rights to Project Chimera. He was not my savior. He was my new owner. And the debt he was creating was 1,000 times more expensive. The meeting ended. Julian was pleased. His performance had gone well. He put a hand on the small of my back. A gesture of ownership. Not affection. A very productive day. Doctor, Tsetna, we will have that contract ready for you by 5. He guided me toward the private elevator. We were walking through the grand marble lobby of the Thorn Capital building. It was a cold, echoing space. And Liam was there. He was not the man I had known. He was not the charismatic, arrogant researcher. He was not the hollowed-out shell in the boardroom. This was a new man. A different man. He was thin. He was filthy. His cheap suit, the one I had paid for, was stained and torn. His eyes were no longer hollow. They were burning. They were burning with the pure, uncut rage of a man who had nothing left to lose. He was waiting. He had been waiting for us. He had been waiting for Julian. "There he is," Liam screamed. His voice was a raw-throated shriek. "The thief." He was pointing. Not at me, but at Julian. The few people in the lobby froze. "That is Julian Thorn," Liam yelled, his voice cracking. "He and that whore. They stole my life. They stole my work. They stole everything." This was his final, desperate attack. He was a man who had lost his career, his mother, his home, and his reputation. He had been exposed as a fraud, a pawn, and a fool. His entire reality had been built on a lie, and in his shattered mind, there was only one person responsible. The man who had pulled the strings, the kingmaker, Julian. He expected people to listen. He expected the public to rally to him. The wronged scientist. He expected justice. He had forgotten me. He had forgotten the slap. I remembered that moment. The sharp crack in the air. The explosion of heat on my cheek. I had sacrificed my physical safety. My last shred of trust. In that moment, I had believed, until that second, that he was a good man, corrupted by his mother. But the slap was his. The violence was his. He was not a victim. He was a predator who had finally been unmasked. While I was sacrificing my own body, my own safety, to maintain the lie of our relationship, he was already a thief. He was already a fraud. The slap was not an aberration. It was the truth. Now, he was lunging. He did not lunge at me. He lunged at Julian. He moved with a speed I had never seen. A desperate. Unhinged animal. He was screaming. I will kill you. You stole my life. Julian did not even flinch. He did not raise his hands. He did not step back. He simply moved. He stepped aside. A matador avoiding a dying bull. And his security was on Liam. In less than a second, 2 men, who had been invisible shadows by the door, materialized. They did not shout. They did not negotiate. They were machines. One man took Liam's arms. The other one struck him. A single, brutal, professional blow to the solar plexus. Liam collapsed. He did not just fall. He folded. All the air, all the rage, all the manic energy, left him in one pathetic, gagging gasp. He was on the marble floor, curled in a fetal position, wheezing. Julian Thorne calmly adjusted the cuff of his $9,000 suit. He brushed a microscopic piece of dust, a piece of Liam's rage, from his sleeve. The lobby was silent, save for Liam's pathetic gasps. The building's security team was there now, surrounding the fallen man. The police had been called. Julian looked down at the man who had been his problem. The noise he had wanted shut up. He looked at me. I had not moved. I had not screamed. I had not reacted at all. I was just watching. I was watching the end of Liam Burke. Julian's face was a mask of bored, cold satisfaction. He had not seen a threat. He had seen an inconvenience. An insect. Problem solved, Julian said to me. His voice was calm. His voice was final. The police arrived. They cuffed Liam. They read him his rights. Assault. Trespassing. He was being dragged up. A sack of broken bones and shattered pride. He was still muttering. Thieves. Liars. My life. I thought back to the anonymous grant. The $50,000. The house I had bought. The barista salary. I had sacrificed everything for this man. I had poured my money, my time, my intelligence, and my dignity into this hollow, pathetic creature. And in the end, he was just trash. Trash that Julian Thorne had just solved. Julian's words, Problem solved, echoed in my head. They were not for Liam. They were for me. He was showing me what happened to noise. He was showing me what happened to people who became inconvenient. Liam was jailed. He was gone. My first tormentor was finally, fully, erased. But as I stood there, in the cold marble lobby, with Julian's hand once again on the small of my back, guiding me toward the elevator, I realized the truth. I was not free. I had not won. I had just traded a small, cheap, violent cage for a large, expensive, and ruthless one. I was still a pawn. I was just on a different, more dangerous chessboard. Julian Thorne was a man who moved quickly. The Liam Burke problem was solved on a Monday. Liam was in a holding cell, awaiting arraignment for assault. Eleanor was, I assumed, navigating the homeless shelter system. By Tuesday morning, there was a new contract on my desk. My desk. It was a cold, 20-foot slab of black marble. In a glass office on the 42nd floor, it was a cage. Identical to Julian's. Just slightly smaller. I was no longer the barista. I was no longer the runaway. I was Dr. Tsetna, Director of Special Projects. It was a title that meant asset in residence. Julian walked in. He did not knock. He owned the air. He placed a thick, leather-bound document in front of me. A new contract, he said. His voice was smooth, triumphant. This was the spoils of war. This was his attack. He was the kingmaker. He had saved me. He had orchestrated Liam's downfall. He had validated my genius in the boardroom. He had solved the Burke noise. He had given me this office. He had created a new debt of gratitude, 1,000 times more expensive than the one I had owed Liam. And this was the invoice. He expected me to be grateful. He expected me to be the runaway bride he had finally tamed. The asset he had finally secured. He expected me to sign. I remembered my engagement to him. The original one. The one my father had arranged. It was not a romance. It was a merger. I was the key term of the deal. I was the living, breathing patent that would unite Zettner Pharmaceuticals and Thorn Capital. I had sacrificed my will, my voice, my entire future, trying to be the good daughter. I had tried to make myself small. I had tried to fit into the polished, silent box he and my father had built for me. Julian would hold my hand at society galas, his grip a little too tight. A gesture of ownership. He would praise me in public. Anna is, of course, brilliant. But she is also practical. He loved that word. Practical. It was his word for tamed. He was proud of how he had sanded down my willful edges. He was a master horseman who had broken a wild mare. He was, in every way, a perfect copy of my father. That was why I had run. That was the life I had fled. Just to land in Liam's cheap, violent, and equally suffocating cage. Now, the cycle was complete. I had destroyed the cheap cage, only to be rescued by the master builder of the expensive one. I looked at the contract. I did not need to read it. I knew what it would say. Exclusive. Perpetuity. 99 years. Thorn Capital. It would give him everything. It would give him Project Chimera. My blood. My life's work. It would give him me. It is a standard asset transfer agreement, Julian said. He was leaning against the desk. All casual. Arrogant power. Given the legal complications of Dr. Burke's theft. This is the cleanest way to protect the intellectual property. It assigns all rights, title, and interest to Thorn Capital. We protect it. We fund it. We weaponize it. He was using the theft as leverage. He was using Liam's crime as the legal justification to complete the theft. I thought of the sacrifice. I thought of the years in the lab, the sleepless nights, the social life I had given up. I thought of the one thing in my life that was truly mine, the one thing that was not Zettner and not Thorn, the work, Project Chimera, my algorithm, my discovery. He was a thief, just like Liam, but he was a better one. Liam was a clumsy, violent, pathetic mugger who had slapped me for my work. Julian was a high-end corporate raider, using lawyers and gratitude to steal the exact same thing. He was just cleaner. I remembered the slap, the sting, the humiliation. Julian had solved that. He had Liam arrested. He had shown me what happened to noise. And now, he was presenting me with the bill. He expected me to be so terrified of the noise, so grateful for the solution, that I would sign away my entire life. He expected the fear. He expected the compliance. He expected the practical girl he had almost married. I did not touch the contract. I did not open it. I just looked at him. No, I said. The smile on Julian's face did not falter. But it froze. It was a mask. No, he repeated. His voice was no longer smooth. It was a sharp, flat thing. I do not think you understand. Anna, this is not a negotiation. This is a formality. No, I said again. I pushed the leather-bound document back across the black marble. I will not sign. I stood up. I was not the runaway bride. I was not the coffee girl. I was Dr. Anna Zettner, and I was, for the first time in my life, in control. You are just like him, I said. Him, Julian's confusion was real. Who Burke, do not be ridiculous. My father, I said. You are just like my father. And you are just like Liam. You do not want a partner. You do not want a director of special projects. You want an asset? You want a practical girl in a box. You want a racehorse you can own. You see Project Chimera as a pile of money. And you see me as the unfortunate, willful attachment that comes with it. Julian's face was no longer a mask. It was pure, cold fury. He was no longer the charming CEO. He was the man I had run from. He had been exposed. You are making a very, very big mistake. Anna, he said. His voice was a low growl. You have no idea what you are doing. I own this. The legal claim is a mess. I can bury this research. I can tie Project Chimera up in court for 10 years. I can make sure Dr. Anna Zettner never works in this town. Or any other. Ever again. This was his final attack. The threat. The table flip. He would destroy the asset rather than let it be free. He expected me to panic. He expected me to break. He expected me to cry. To apologize. To sign the contract. I smiled. It was a small, cold smile. The one I had been hiding for a year. Go ahead, I said. He stared at me. What? Bury it. I said. Bury the research. Tie it up in court. Do it. You will spend millions of dollars. And you will get nothing. I will get the satisfaction of ruining you. He spat. No. You will not. I said. I leaned across the desk. My face just inches from his barriga. Because you will be burying an incomplete asset. You see, Julian, you have the same problem Liam had. You are a thief. But you are a stupid one. You are trying to steal something you do not even understand. What are you talking about? He hissed. Project Chimera. I said, it is my life's work. And it is flawed. It is incomplete. It is missing the validation key. The key that Liam could not find. The key that you cannot find. The key that is not on a USB drive. Or a server. Or a piece of paper. I tapped my temple. Once. It is in here. I said, I am the key. So go ahead. Julian, bury me. You will just be burying an empty, useless, billion-dollar box. And I will just invent something new. His face was a masterpiece. It was pure, unadulterated shock. He was a predator who had just realized his prey was a trap. He had been outmaneuvered. He, the kingmaker, had been made a fool. He was furious. He was trapped. He had lost the legal fight. He could not take the asset. He could not force me to sign. So he would do the only thing a man like him, a man like my father, could do. If he could not own the research, he would destroy the researcher. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing to two cold, blue slits. He was no longer thinking about the contract. He was thinking about a new strategy. He was going to destroy my reputation. Julian's humiliation in my office was on a Tuesday. The Wednesday morning, the war had begun. It was not a legal battle. It was not a physical assault. It was worse. It was a story. A single, perfectly crafted, Devastating story. Leaked to every major financial news outlet in the country. The runaway heiress and the biotech thief. This was Julian's attack. It was not a table flip. It was a scorched earth campaign. Executed with the cold precision of a professional assassin. He was not just trying to win, he was trying to annihilate. The article was a masterpiece of slander. It painted me as an unstable, manipulative gold digger. It claimed I had run away from my concerned family. It claimed I had latched onto a promising young scientist, Liam Burke. It claimed I had seduced him, stolen his research, and then, in an act of supreme betrayal, tried to sell that stolen research to the Honorable Julian Thorne. Julian was the victim in this story. He was the kingmaker, the protector of intellectual property, who had discovered my fraud and righteously cast me out. He was the man who had tried to save me, only to be met with extortion. He was using my own leverage against me. My runaway status was now instability. My secret identity was deception. My ownership of Project Chimera was theft. He expected me to be destroyed. He expected the world to see me as a pariah. He expected my reputation to be so thoroughly incinerated that no one would ever believe me. He expected me to be isolated, radioactive, and penniless. He expected me to come crawling back to his office, begging him to fix the problem he had created, begging to sign the contract in exchange for his protection. I remembered a board meeting. Years ago, it was at Zettner Pharmaceuticals. I had presented a new pricing model for an emerging market, a model that prioritized access over profit. I had worked on it for months. I had sacrificed my nights, my weekends, my social life. I believed it was the right thing to do. I believed it was good work. My father had listened. He had listened to the entire 40-minute presentation without interruption. The boardroom was silent. He was the king, and I was the idealistic princess. When I finished, he did not get angry. He smiled. It was that cold, calculating smile, the one he used before a corporate execution. "Anna," he said, his voice smooth and patronizing, "your heart is a liability, not an asset. You are soft. You are thinking about people, when you should be thinking about shareholders." He called me idealistic. He called me naive. I was humiliated. I had sacrificed my dignity, trying to appeal to his. I had tried to show him I was more than just his willful daughter. I had tried to show him I had a mind of my own. He had dismissed that mind as soft. But 2 months later, I saw the Q3 projections. My father had taken my soft proposal, stripped it of its compassion, and used the core research to create a new, aggressive patent strategy, a strategy that locked out all competitors and was projected to increase profits by 30%. He had used my softness to forge a new weapon. He had not seen a daughter. He had seen an R&D department that he did not have to pay. I had filed that memory away. I had filed it under proof that Julian Thorne and my father were cut from the same cold marble cloth. The slander campaign was brutal. The stairs in the lobby of my apartment building were like tiny knives. The director of special projects title was now a joke. I was a prisoner in my own home. The gold digger in the penthouse. The noise was deafening. And then, on Thursday, the noise stopped. A single phone call cut through the static cleese. It was a private number. An unlisted number. A number I had not dialed in over a year. It was my father. His voice was not warm. It was not concerned. It was not fatherly. It was the voice of the CEO of Zettner Pharmaceuticals. It was the voice from the boardroom. "Anna," he said. It was a statement, not a question. "You have been loud," he said. I waited. I did not speak. I did not defend myself. I knew this was not a rescue. This was a performance review. "I taught you to be precise," he continued, his voice dripping with aristocratic disappointment. "I taught you that assets are to be controlled, not paraded. You have aligned yourself with an amateur. A very, very loud amateur. He was not talking about Liam. He was talking about Julian. He was not angry for me. He was angry at me. He was angry that I, his willful asset, had gotten involved in such a messy public spectacle. I had embarrassed the family name. I had failed to be practical. I had sacrificed my entire life, my entire identity, to escape this man. I had lived as a ghost to be free of his control. And now, in a single day, Julian's amateur attack had brought the king roaring back. This is unfortunate, my father said. Julian Thorne was a partner of this firm. We had significant investments with Thorne Capital. He was useful until he became sloppy. I realized, with a cold, sinking horror, what was happening. My father was not calling to save me. He was calling to inform me of a business decision. I am pulling our funding, my father said. All of it. Effective immediately. One does not do business with noise. One does not do business with men who cannot control their personal entanglements. It is, as I said, sloppy. This was the twist. My father was not my savior. He was my executioner. He was punishing Julian. He was punishing Julian. Not for the slander. Not for the cruelty. Not for the theft. He was punishing Julian for being a bad manager, for failing to control the asset, for failing to keep me, his runaway daughter. Quiet and practical. I was the leverage. I was the reason. Julian, in his arrogant, furious attempt to destroy me, had just lost his single biggest investor. He had been publicly humiliated. Not by me, but by the king, by the man he had tried so hard to emulate. Do not make any more noise, Anna, my father said, and he hung up. The silence in my apartment was absolute. Julian was ruined. He had lost his primary funding. His company would be gutted by morning. He had lost the Kingmaker War. I had won. But I felt nothing. I felt no triumph. I felt no relief. I had just watched one monster devour another. And I was the reason. I knew Julian. I knew what he was. He was not my father. He did not have my father's cold, calculating patience. He was all ego, all fire. He had just been cornered. He had been publicly castrated by the one man he respected. He had lost the research. He had lost his investor. He had lost everything. A man like Julian Thorne, a man with nothing left to lose, would not go quietly. He would not just bury the research. He would not just destroy my reputation. He would destroy me. The war was not over. The Scorched Earth campaign had just truly begun. Julian's disparity, public slander had failed. It had backfired so spectacularly that it had summoned the one man he truly feared. My father. My father. In a single, cold business decision, had pulled his funding. He had gutted Thorne Capital. Julian was not just humiliated. He was bankrupt. He was a pariah. But a cornered animal is the most dangerous. Julian, in his arrogance, had leaked to the press that he would be attending the annual Zettner Foundation Gala. This was the crown jewel of Boston society. It was my father's fortress. It was an event so exclusive that presidents and kings were put on a waiting list. Julian's announcement was a pathetic, desperate bluff. He was trying to force a public confrontation. He was trying to create noise. I knew this gala. I remembered the last one I had attended. 3 years ago. I had been on Julian's arm. I was his fiancé. I was the practical asset. The key to the merger between Thorne and Zettner. I had sacrificed my identity for that role. I had worn the suffocating dress, the polite smile. I had silenced my own mind, my own ambitions, to be the good daughter and the supportive partner. I remembered my father's toast. He had raised his glass to Julian. A man of action. My father had said. He is a fine choice. Not an academic. Thank God. He had looked right at me when he said it. A casual, brutal dismissal of my PhD. My work. My entire passion. It was a public branding. I was soft. Julian was useful. I remembered Julian's smile. That proud, proprietary smile. He was a master horseman who had broken the wild mare. He was accepting the toast. And I was the prize he had won. And I, the impractical academic. I knew the truth. I knew that the action my father was toasting was a merger built on research I had secretly authored. I had watched them. Two identical monsters. Toasting their own genius while standing on my back. They were not partners. They were thieves. Congratulating each other on a successful heist. I had filed it away. I had filed it under proof. Now, I was walking into that gala again. I was not a fiancé. I was not a runaway. I was Dr. Anna Zettner. My father met me at the grand entrance. His face was granite. He was not happy to see me. He was furious about the noise. He was furious that his practical asset had become so very do-the-dealess. Loud. And then, right on cue, the noise arrived. Julian Thorne. He was not in a tuxedo. He looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were wild. He pushed past the velvet rope. Julian, a reporter shouted. The press, whom he had clearly tipped off, swarmed the entrance. Cameras flashed, turning the night into a blinding interrogation. Security immediately blocked him. A wall of impassive, dark-suited men. This was his attack. This was his final, desperate assault. Julian Thorne, he screamed. His voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger at me. I am a partner of this foundation. I demand entry. She is the fraud. The cameras turned to me. The reporters surged. Anna Zettner, he shrieked. She stole my research. She stole everything. She is a liar. She is a thief. This was the expectation. This was the loud scandal. The ultimate public humiliation. Julian expected my father to panic. He expected my father to do anything to stop the noise. To drag us all inside. To negotiate. To silence the cameras. He expected me to be terrified. To be broken by the public shame. I did not move. My father did not move. His granite face was unchanged. He looked past Julian. He looked past the screaming reporters. He looked past me. He locked eyes with his head of security. Mr. Davos. My father did not raise his voice. He spoke with the cold, absolute authority of a man who owns the air. Mr. Davos. My father said, I believe I gave an instruction earlier this week. The head of security nodded. Yes. Sire. Was I unclear, my father asked? No. Sire. My father finally turned his gaze to Julian. It was not anger. It was not disappointment. It was pure, freezing contempt. The look a man gives a stain on his shoe. Mr. Thorne, my father said. His voice cut through the chaos like a surgeon's blade. You are not a partner. You are a debtor. The screaming stopped. The cameras zoomed in. You are, my father continued, currently under investigation for criminal fraud, related to the $500 million of Zettner capital that you have. Misplaced. You are not a guest here. Julian's face, once red with rage, was now a waxy, bloodless white. You are a trespasser, my father stated. He turned back to his security. Mr. Davos, remove the trash. It was not an arrest. It was an extermination. Mr. Davos and two other guards grabbed Julian Thorne. They did not escort him. They dragged him. He screamed. He screamed my name. He screamed my father's name. He screamed fraud and thief and liar. He kicked and fought. a child having a tantrum. They dragged him, kicking and screaming, past the velvet ropes, across the marble lobby, and threw him onto the sidewalk. The press, ecstatic, captured every single second of it. The kingmaker of Boston finance, reduced to garbage, thrown out of the palace gates. The heavy oak doors of the gala closed. The noise was outside. Julian was broken. He was finished. He was destroyed. My father turned to me. His face was still granite. "See what noise brings." "Anna," he asked. He was not proud. He was not relieved. He was blaming me for the mess. He had solved the Julian problem, just as Julian had solved the Liam problem. I had not been saved. I had just been reacquired. The gala was the public execution. The next morning was the acquisition. I was summoned, not invited, summoned, to the boardroom on the 50th floor, the steel and glass box where my father ruled. This was his attack. It was not Julian's loud slander. It was not Liam's pathetic physical violence. This was the clean, cold, absolute power of the king. I remembered this room. I remembered being 8 years old. I had sacrificed my Saturday cartoons. I had sat in this very chair. My father was teaching me the stock ticker. He pointed to the scrolling green lights. "That is not a game. Anna," he had said, "that is a war. It is the only war that matters. Win it." He was proud. He thought I was a prodigy. He thought I was a true Zettner. He had praised my cold logic. He was so proud of the Zettner in me. He never realized the Anna in me was listening. 2. He thought he was training a soldier for his army. He did not realize, even then, that I was learning how to be a general. He had sacrificed my childhood to build an heir. He had only succeeded in building a rival. I sat down. The entire executive board was present. They were the onlookers, the witnesses to my reacquisition. My father stood at the head of the table. He was magnificent. He was a lion in a $1,000 suit. He was smiling. The Julian problem was solved. The noise was gone. "Anna," he began. His voice was warm, but it was the warmth of a furnace. Not the sun. It was the warmth of industry. "It is good to have you home. You have had a difficult year." He was using my pain as leverage. He was framing my escape, my abuse, my survival, as a difficult year, a youthful folly. "You have proven," he continued, "that you are, perhaps, not suited for the tableau instability of the outside world. It is loud out there." I remembered David, my college boyfriend. He was a poet. He was kind. He was soft. My father had discovered our relationship. He had summoned me. Just like this. "He is a distraction. Anna," he had said. "He has no action. He is soft. He will make you soft." I had sacrificed my first love. I had broken David's heart. And my own. I had done it to prove I was practical. To prove I was strong. To prove I was a Zettner. I had sacrificed my softness just to be worthy of this man's approval. I had filed that pain away. I had filed it under never again. My father was still speaking. "But Project Chimera is impressive. The research is solid. It is good action. Therefore, it needs a practical home. It needs the protection and resources of Zettner Pharmaceuticals." The board members nodded. This was the apparent loss. The king was claiming his spoils. He smiled at me. The lion's smile. "We are creating a new role for you. Director of Internal Research Audits. You will report to Dr. Mercer. A demotion. A gilded cage. Director of Audits meant I would hold a clipboard and watch other people work. I would be a practical asset. Safely locked in the basement. While my father and his men weaponized my life's work. This was his expectation. He expected me to be grateful. He expected the runaway daughter. beaten and bruised by the loud world, to accept her safe cage. He expected me to be the soft girl, the practical asset, the good daughter. He expected me to say thank you. The boardroom was silent. They were all looking at me. I smiled. It was a small, cold smile, the one he had taught me. Thank you, Father, I said. The board relaxed. The tension broke. My father nodded. Satisfied. The acquisition was complete. That is a very generous offer. I continued. My voice was calm, clear, and cut through the air. But I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding. The silence snapped back. My father's smile did not falter. But his eyes went cold. You are correct, I said. Project Chimera was the research. It was my work. My life's work. I remembered the moment I named it. I was in that cheap apartment. Coffee cups everywhere. I was hiding from Julian. I was hiding from my father. I was sacrificing my health, my sleep, my sanity. I was living on caffeine and adrenaline. I was building my escape. I had named it Chimera, a hybrid monster. From different parts, a creature of myth, an impossibility. My father thought it was a clever project name. He did not realize it was my flag. Project Chimera, I said to the board, was the development phase, but I am not here to discuss a project. I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a single leather-bound folder, the same kind my father used. I slid it down the polished table. It stopped. Perfectly. In front of his chair. He did not touch it. Chimera, I said, is not a project. It is an acronym. Consolidated Helix Informatics and Molecular Research Analytics. I stood up. And Chimera Analytics is not a Zettner asset. Father, it is my company, incorporated 2 months ago. This was the twist. This was the situational smart logic. My father's face. It was no longer granite. It was cracking. I had watched him destroy Julian. I had watched him destroy Liam. He thought he was the only predator. He did not see the one he had trained. You. What, he breathed. I am declining your generous offer of employment. I said, and I am afraid, Dr. Mercer will have to find a new director of audits. I looked at Dr. Mercer, a man who had stolen my ideas for a decade, and I am also afraid, I said, that you will have to find a new head of R&D, and a new chief geneticist, and a new lead biostatistician. I remembered Dr. Ben Carter, a brilliant, soft man. My father had wanted to fire him for years. He is not practical. Father, I had argued. He is a genius. My father had laughed. Genius is soft. Anna, action is all that matters. I had sacrificed my own low profile to protect Ben. I had secretly funded his soft research. Using my own trust fund, I had hidden my impractical allies from my father's practical acts. Dr. Carter, Dr. Reno, and Dr. Phillips all tendered their resignations 30 minutes ago. I said, they have accepted new positions. I pointed to the folder. They are the new executive board of Chimera Analytics. Dr. Carter, Dr. Reno, and Dr. Phillips all tendered their resignations 30 minutes ago. I said, they have accepted new positions. I had not just left his company. I had gutted it. I had taken his top 3 scientists. I had taken the soft men he had dismissed. I had taken the useless research he had ignored. I had watched him for 30 years. I had watched him collect assets. I had watched him demand action. He had failed to see the difference between assets and allies. His empire was built on fear. Mine would be built on loyalty. I walked to the door. Anna, he roared. It was not a command. It was a plea. I turned. He was alone, a king in an empty room. The war was over, and he had lost. "You are soft." "Father," I said, "you were thinking about shareholders, when you should have been thinking about me." The silence in my father's boardroom, after I had gutted it, was absolute. The king was alone on his throne, his practical world shattered by the soft daughter he had dismissed. I did not wait for a reply. I did not look back. I simply walked out. That was 6 months ago. Today, I am not in a boardroom. I am in a lab, the headquarters of Chimera Analytics. It is not cold steel and glass. It is warm wood, open spaces, and whiteboards covered in the beautiful, chaotic equations of Project Chimera. It is not silent. It is loud. It is filled with debate, with laughter, with the soft noise of genius. I am the CEO. I am Dr. Anna Zettner, and I am finally home. My impractical allies are now my executive team, Dr. Ben Carter, the soft genius my father wanted to fire, just pioneered a gene sequencing algorithm that will change medicine. He is not impractical. He is a visionary. My father had seen a cost. I saw a mind. My father has not called. His action is to pretend I do not exist. He thinks of it as a punishment. He does not realize it is a gift. The noise of my old life has faded, but sometimes there are echoes. I was at a small cafe near the lab last week, grabbing coffee for the team. I was waiting in line, reviewing a data schematic on my phone. "Welcome to... Can I take your order?" I looked up. I did not recognize him at first. He was thinner. His eyes, once bright with that false, academic arrogance, were dull. He was wearing a green apron and a name tag. The name tag read, LIM. He saw me. His entire body froze. The plastic smile he had been practicing melted from his face. I remembered that night in the tiny apartment. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by textbooks, paying his student loan bills. I had sacrificed my own academic stipend, my own savings, so he could focus on his brilliant career. I was living on instant noodles, so he could buy necessary lab equipment. He had walked in, drunk, angry. He had looked at my textbooks. "You are still doing that," he had sneered. "Why are you wasting your time? You are just a coffee girl. Anna, a glorified assistant. Be practical. Be useful. Go get me a beer." Now, he stood there, in his green apron. He was the coffee boy. He had not gone to jail. That would have been too loud. Instead, Julian's practical solution had been a public firing for academic incompetence. With my research gone, Liam Burke had nothing. His brilliance was a hollow shell. He was a fraud. He had been blacklisted from every research institution in the country. This was poetic justice. He had built his entire identity on the lie that he was a genius and I was a servant. Now, he was the servant. He opened his mouth. No sound came out. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I did not feel anything. He was not a monster. He was not a villain. He was just a cost, a bad investment. I looked at my phone. "I am sorry," I said, my voice calm. "I am in the wrong place." I turned, and I walked out. And then, there was Julian. I read about him in the financial papers. He was not on the front page. He was a footnote. On page 12, Thorn Capital Liquidation. The kingmaker was dead. I remembered his wild, screaming face at the gala. "I am a partner," he had shrieked. He was a man who had sacrificed his soul for status. He had built his entire world on the action of public perception. My father's practical move, pulling his funding, had destroyed that perception. The noise Julian had tried to create had consumed him. He was a debtor, a fraude, a trespassé. He had lost his money. He had lost his allies. He was socially radioactive. The man who had tried to annihilate my reputation now had no reputation at all. He had vanished. He was not missing. He was just irrelevant. He was a ghost. He was the noise in a room that no one listened to anymore. My father, too, was a ghost. I looked out my office window. Across the Boston Harbor, the Zettner Tower stood tall, a monument of cold, dark glass. It was my father's fortress, and it was his prison. He was still the CEO. He was still the king. But he was a king of an empty castle. His action had left him with assets, but no allies. He had his shareholders, but he had lost his heir. I remembered his voice in the boardroom. 30 years ago, that is a war. Anna, win it. I had. He had taught me to be practical. He had taught me to be cold. He had taught me to see the world as a war. He had sacrificed my softness to forge his weapon. He just never expected the weapon to have a mind of its own. Doctor. Carter knocked on my open door. He was smiling, holding up a printout. Anna, he said, his voice full of the impractical excitement I loved. I think you need to see this. The soft model. It is working. I turned away from the window. And from the cold, silent tower across the water. I smiled. A real one. Good. I said, tell the team. Let's begin. End.